Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another F1 Fantasy Weekly, the second one after the postseason, and this is going to be part one of F1 Fantasy Weekly season review. And in typical F1 Fantasy form, because we didn't kind of keep up to date with it all season, as we assumed that there might be some easily accessible platform to log all the scores and give you the top drivers and the top teams.
We did start halfway through.
We did. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you what we assume are the top 10 drivers and talk about them a little bit today, and also what we assume are the top 5 teams. We can have pretty good educated guess on this, just can't really give you any points of any sort. But yes, and as always, we'll give you an idea of what F1 Fantasy is in preparation for next year's game. So what F1 Fantasy actually is it's like any other fantasy sport game. You have a budget, in this case $100 million budget, where you select 5 drivers and 1 constructor, and they score you points over the course of a race weekend during qualifying and the race, and you can compete against your mates all globally and see whether you can come out on top. And Stephen hasn't yet received his email, so no official confirmation, but I received my email saying that I was in the top 2% and my fantasy points converted into the driver standings would be Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. So that, I think, is certification that we are F1 fantasy experts.
100%.
I completely agree.
Although I may be a Valtteri Bottas.
Oh no.
I don't know.
You could be an F1 fantasy sub-expert.
I'm just consistent.
You're consistent.
Yeah, I'm consistent.
Hi Tara. She's back again.
She's back.
So yes, we will move on to our what we assume are the top 10 and the top 5 constructors in this week, and then obviously in the last week we will follow the bottom 10 and bottom 5 constructors. If we get anyone wrong, we are sorry, but we're guessing we're pretty right. So number 1, I think, is a pretty safe bet, and that is Lewis Hamilton.
Yep. Won the Drivers' Championship. Won most of the races, majority of races. Well,
yeah, not the majority of pole positions though.
No, but races is where the points are at.
Yeah.
He smashed it.
He did overrule, but for that though, I would say at times this season he certainly hasn't been a cost-effective option,
no.
Especially at the start of the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Where obviously Mercedes had a little dip compared to where Ferrari were.
Yeah, from between Germany and Spa. Or Germany and
Sochi, I would say. Sochi was probably the best time to bring him in.
I was going to say Singapore, but yeah.
Because they got the strategy all wrong in Singapore, didn't they?
Yeah, well, from starting at Germany, bad, all the way to Singapore, bad.
But after that, if you had him pre or post that, he probably did you pretty good. Number 2, Valtteri Bottas. And for me, he was, in terms of top drivers, the fantasy pick of the year.
Yeah. Cheapest one, top 6, other than Albon and Gasly.
Yep, who came in late and who you could turbo. But obviously you only had half season. Gasly didn't necessarily do great with that and wasn't a great turbo with it. It was only Albon who was kind of the power turbo in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bottas, in terms of price for points you were getting, where it could free up your budget and you could invest elsewhere, Bottas was certainly the fantasy pick of the season and got you a really decent points return as well. Yeah. If you had him, I think he was pretty consistent throughout my team all year, bar the last race. So yeah, sorry Bottas about
that. He would have been a pretty good shot for the last race as well.
Would have been. Number 3, I'm going to guess it's going to be Max Verstappen, because obviously he got those 3 race wins fairly consistent podiums and obviously got qualifying ones. He was pretty solid in terms of qualifying streaks and race streaks.
Yeah.
I think he maximised those types
Yeah.
of... I think Max Verstappen, again, was a pretty solid pick. And...
It should be noted, Lewis completed the most laps, didn't he?
Yeah.
Out of the whole grid. So just finishing...
He was the only one not to retire.
Finishing races, there's no minus points, whereas
Exactly.
all the others have had minus points.
Exactly.
Yeah, Verstappen finished third in the Drivers' Championship, so...
I realistically think he's got third in the fantasy as well.
Yeah. They
Because-
normally correlate, because obviously you get the points per race as like added on to your fantasy score.
Yeah. So it usually correlates, but I reckon there will be some differences within it, especially when we get lower in the midfield.
The mid-table, yeah.
Yeah, I reckon this top 6 will be pretty easy. Number 4, Charles Leclerc. Again, a very good option in terms of price per return, especially as he was the one getting the pole positions and usually competing at the top. He was pretty consistent point scorer, and if you had him from Spa through to Sochi, I reckon...
Ooh, points.
He was, big points return on that front.
He consistently beat Phil as well, didn't he?
The majority of the time, I think Vettel was the only
head-to-heads?
time that he beat him majorly was in Singapore, which was obviously the week that you took him out and was obviously a highlight of the fantasy season.
Let's not go back there.
Let's not go back to the dark place.
Also in Canada, Phil did very well.
But 5, I would assume, it would be Vettel, but I think he would be the bottom out of the 5 and probably closest to the Carlos Sainz and the Alex Albons of the point scoring.
Yeah.
And there. So number 5, I give to Sebastian Vettel. I would say, arguably in terms of price per points return, one of the worst picks you've had this year. Bar if you got him right for like Singapore and a couple of other races, like Canada, I reckon his return was pretty good as well. Bar those races, I would say, in terms of price, because obviously him and Lewis were the most expensive drivers going into season, they wouldn't have been a great return for you.
Yeah.
A disappointing season for Vettel in real life and also as an F1 fantasy player as well.
Yeah. He's got to see a big price drop.
Yeah.
But we'll come on to that when we do our looking forward to 2020.
In P6, I imagine it is between Sainz
This one's
and
a tough
Albon.
one. Yeah.
I think it will be Albon just because how good a turbo he was in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he was consistently just getting that 4th or 5th place.
Yeah, and kind of getting the most turbo. But I think it was only, out of the second half of the season races, I think it was only like 1 or 2 races. I think it might have been 2 out of 9 where he wasn't the top turbo pick.
Brazil.
And there was one before that.
I don't think there was.
There was. He just, due to streaks, I think Nico Hulkenberg. Actually, it might have been Suzuka.
Maybe. Try and think.
Because I think Nico was on for a streak there somewhere. But I don't know.
I don't think... Oh, he did sneak... No, because Hulkenberg finished 10th in Suzuka. Anyway, he was a very good turbo pick album. We kept trying to make a case that you should go for Sainz, Ricciardo, but we finally gave him. It was like, he just keeps being the best turbo.
He was such consistent. And I think for us, in how we improved in that second half of the season, I just think Albon probably makes our number 6 position in it.
Yeah.
Again, hi Tara, wanting to kind of crash the fantasy podcast again. She always wants to get her opinion across. So for all our cat viewers who are out there, we hope you enjoy Tara's take on the F1 Fantasy. 7 has to be Sainz.
Has to be. Although there are a few retirements and there are a few minus points, which is probably what puts him below Albon.
Yeah, there were. Obviously, the first 3 races of the season weren't great points return, because I remember having him early and going, Sainz, he's the man, and then it just didn't really work out, but sticking with him paid off in the end.
Yeah.
And then the first 3 races since after the summer break, I don't think were great for him fantasy-wise as well. But overall, still an absolutely fantastic season for Carlos Sainz. He was brilliant on that front. I don't think there's much more to say. Now, for P8, I think it really is between Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez.
Well, I think Gasly's going to be up there.
I think he will, but...
Just on championship points.
Yeah, but what also benefited Albon was because Max dropped places, didn't he? And Albon managed to actually get the teammate advantage
on the head-to-heads,
on the head-to-head as well, where Gasly always finished behind Verstappen bar Silverstone.
But he was consistently finishing in the top 10 and qualifying in the top 10.
Yeah, so he might have got bonuses.
Streaks. There. I think Gasly would come in behind Sainz.
And Perez didn't have a points finish.
And he got that
from
big
Azerbaijan to
second
Spa.
place in Brazil.
You know what? That's probably a good return actually on that front. I think you're probably right. So we'll go P8 is Pierre Gasly. In the first half of the season, really poor investment money-wise.
Yeah.
The second half of the season, we didn't either of us really pick him.
No.
But I imagine if we had, it probably wouldn't have been that bad a points return. Probably would have been pretty good. But we also did have Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo, who definitely feel 9 and 10 for them, to round off the top 10 on the drivers' front. So, yeah, I think Sergio Perez probably nicks it for me, because I think Ricciardo had more retirements.
Yeah.
I can only think of Perez to mind Hockenheim and Singapore.
I think the thing that decides it is Suzuka. The minus 19 points from Danny Rick.
But obviously Danny Rick did also get a 4th place in Monza, which might have covered that gap. Would have been interesting. But yeah, we'll go Sergio Perez as 9, as he was my driver of the second half of the season. We did that in the season review that came out yesterday, so if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check that out. And yeah, we'll go P10 Daniel Ricciardo, but both pretty solid returns and pretty solid midfield ones. As the season went on and kind of normality cracked in, it seemed to be a kind of a flow between Sainz, Perez and Ricciardo, or Albon plus two of the 3 of Ricciardo, Perez and Sainz, didn't it?
Yeah.
That seemed to be how it did. And then whatever you could manage and how you saved money with Bottas and Leclerc and Verstappen. They were the 3 you normally rotated. Yeah. Unless obviously you went Hamilton as well. Went 1 big and 4 small.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that tactic would have worked out necessarily too well over the course of the season. But now we move on to the top 5 constructors, and number 1 will be easy. Mercedes. Absolutely dominated. I lost count with how many 70 scores they got because of the amount of 1-2s that Mercedes got in this season. Yeah, they smashed it in the Constructors in real life, and they absolutely smashed it in fantasy as well.
Yeah.
And I pretty much had them as my constructor since day 1. And I think maybe 1 race or a couple of races I switched them out for Ferrari, but I pretty much had them all year, and it was a very solid points return.
I think that was my mistake of taking them out. Second half season I played around my team a bit, the constructor. And it turns out Mercedes just was the best pick.
Yeah.
Over the course, obviously the start of the second half season would have been Ferrari. But over the course of the whole period. Yeah.
And I also think that Ferrari will be in P2 position over Red Bull, just because I think consistently their drivers seem to finish close to each other, so maximise points. They always seem to be generally in the qualifying. Yes, there obviously was no, because he still made it into Q3. Leclerc, didn't he, when he crashed out in Azerbaijan? He just wasn't able to complete. Yeah. It was Monaco that and they had some technical issues throughout the season.
Although the Brazil result would have hurt them. Yeah. But not too much.
No, but in the race, I would say, generally, they would have outbeaten Red Bull, especially with Gasly's first half of the season. I would say, as a whole, they generally finished more points ahead of Red Bull. But Red Bull probably move into P3 with that. And Ferrari and Red Bull... Ferrari were the ones, really, if you were going to move... I don't think Red Bull really had many weekends at all where they were a great pick.
No.
It was...
They had a couple.
They had a couple that basically, they might have beaten Ferrari.
When Max Verstappen won, they had a good weekend.
Yeah. But overall, Ferrari were probably a safer bet throughout from there. Now this is where it gets tricky. I'm going to assume McLaren there, although Norris didn't score that many points. So
I think this is the tricky part, because the smaller constructors are always a bad pick because they just don't get you the big points.
No, but the teams...
it's a good way to cheap out, but you do lose quite a lot of points. Because you could have 20 points, but Mercedes are getting nearly 80 points. It's like you're immediately losing 50 points.
Yeah, on the money you saved...
You're going to have to make the best driver picks to make up the point difference.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to not lose as many points in drivers than it is constructors.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a way they need to look into changing how constructors score points, but there isn't really a way to do it. It kind of makes sense.
2021, you never know.
Yeah, but you never know. You might just put them because you like them.
But I think Renault scored quite well.
Yeah, Renault to me scored. I remember they were up there in a few, and pretty good value for money.
They were 4th or 5th.
Yeah, and I would say McLaren there. I would say the teams that finished 4th and 5th in the constructors were generally the ones who...
Racing Point would have been there if Lance Stroll chipped in with Perez.
Yeah, Lance Stroll did let the Racing Point down.
Just for qualifying streaks as well.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't getting any. Whereas McLaren and Renault were actually pushing for quali streaks. Yeah.
Exactly. Qualifying streaks, McLaren definitely. Renault were a bit inconsistent. But race streaks, I would say Renault were definitely there as well.
Yeah.
On that front. But yeah, those are our top 10 and our top 5 of there. It's been part 1 of our season review. But of course, with any F1 Fantasy Weekly podcast, we have to finish off with a Kimi Moment of the Week.
Kimi Moment of the Week. What have you got for us today?
We've got 2 Kimi Moments of the Week again. Because it's exciting. So while I find the main one, the other one I saw on Twitter today, one of those funny things, people kind of make up those, your birth month is what you're getting. And they did it on an F1 related one, and your birth month is who's coming round for Christmas dinner with you. And my birth month is September, and the driver who is September is...
No.
It is Kimi Räikkönen. And yeah, how brilliant is that? So Kimi's coming for Christmas, everyone. So yeah, I suppose we better get prepared.
Special guest on F1 Fantasy, Kimi Räikkönen confirmed.
Yeah, I suppose we better prepare in terms of what we're going to get him. What do you think Kimi likes to eat at Christmas? Maybe people can leave in the comments below of
that's the thing
of what they may think
We need to get our inflatable dolphins ready.
Yeah, do we need lots of ice? Do we need to turn the heating off? No fires because he's the ice man.
Maybe.
Will it melt him? We don't know. But ice actually leads into quite nicely the main Kimi Raikkonen F1 Kimi moment of the week. So, you know, we're going to go all the way back to Kimi Raikkonen's debut. So, you know, how do you reckon you'd be feeling before a debut? You know,
nervous,
first like nervous,
excited though.
Yeah,
this is your moment.
Maybe a bit agitated. You know, just raring to go, ready to jump in the car.
Yeah, a bit impatient, probably.
Yeah, you know, definitely kind of with it. Maybe talking to race engineers, trying to get some last bit of advice before you kind of go out.
Yeah, people are talking to you and they're like, I just want to go.
Yeah. So that's what we think most athletes would be. Do you think at all that you might be sleeping?
Probably not. You know, a lot of athletes say they have sleepless nights before like a big thing.
So, that's not Kimi. Kimi's not normal.
Yep.
So to deal with all the publicity, or perhaps he was just being Kimi, the young driver decided to take a nap underneath a table in the Sauber garage.
Ah, yes.
He was woken up 30 minutes before the race.
Okay.
Perfect race prep. I think everyone should prep like that, you know? Wake up, bang, I'm ready to go, let's go.
Just wanders onto the grid, jumps in his car.
It maybe explain why he's not talkative, because, you know, when you just wake up in the morning...
You don't want to talk to anyone.
You don't want to talk to her. He's probably got that groggy morning voice, you know. He's probably a bit conscious about his breath. He maybe hasn't brushed his teeth.
So he just wants to get in that car.
Yeah.
And just...
You think maybe he might have grown out of it?
Maybe.
Well, in 2013 as well was as another incident where he wasn't available for autographs on the pit walk. You know, on like Thursday, like fans might go on the pit walk and they come out and they talk to the drivers. And his teammate at the time was asked, and they were asked, at the Malaysian Grand Prix, is Kimi around? Where's the Iceman? Where's the Iceman? The Iceman is sleeping. And that
was it.
Is where it leads in to the Kimi Moment of the Week. I hope you've enjoyed that Kimi Moment of the Week. As we've now said, that the Kimi Moment of the Weeks will now just be stories that we find throughout Kimi Raikkonen's illustrious career. Obviously, going into next year, he will be one of only 3 drivers on the grid to have driven in 3 decades.
Oh. Can I just ask where he finished on his first ever race?
You know what? I don't actually know.
He crashed out on the first corner.
But he did.
He said he was a bit sleepy still.
But that will probably be another Kimi Raikkonen moment, because he made his debut in F1 having only ever driven 23 professional races up until then.
Jeez.
He was just talent ID spotted, and they're like, this guy's quick, and just chucked him in the car. And the FIA had a real issue with it, I remember at the time.
Really?
Yeah, because they were like, I'm not sure, whether, obviously in today's world with super license points, he would nowhere near been near. He didn't even complete like a full season, I don't think, in any junior categories. But yeah, that, guys, is the Kimi Moment of the Week. So I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope that's a little bit of F1 fantasy to get you through. Apologies again for not having official scores, but I think our guesstimates are pretty good.
We can't give you accurate scores, but we're pretty sure that's how the table would have looked.
Exactly. So we'll then next week be back for part 2 of our season, F1 Fantasy season review, where we'll do the bottom 10 drivers, bottom 5 teams, and give our thoughts in terms of how they were in terms of fantasy picks. And for round off, and of course another Kimi Moment of the Week, where we look at a story from Kimi's past and just see how Kimi made it Kimi.
I can't believe he took a nap.
he
I'm
took
just
a nap.
imagining the FIA officials going, how are they sending this kid out to drive? Well, his preparation must be good there. They just see Kimi passed out under a table go, oh no.
He's going to crash. He's going to cause a crash. I will tell you what, by next week, I will find out what was Kimi Raikkonen's official result in his first race, and with our story, to find out how this one unfolds. Or if anyone knows it and can comment below, obviously, you can comment below. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.